Okay, so I'm here with Lindsay Brewer, race car driver. How you doing, Lindsay?
I'm good. How are you, Andy? Glad
Good.
to be here.
Yeah. So why don't we get right into it and talk about how you got into racing? Because you're what, 22, 23 years old?
I'm 23, yeah. So you
Okay.
want me to kind of go into from the very beginning how I got into it, kind of my whole story with it?
Yeah, let me ask you. So I do a lot of NASCAR, and I know it's very different from the type of racing that you're doing, but it seems like one common place everybody starts when they're 9 or 11 years old or whatever it is they start in go-karts. So talk
Mhm.
about racing in go-karts and kind of I guess, your journey from that to doing some open wheel racing and some of the different things that you do, which is I know is very different than NASCAR and stock car racing.
Yeah, so I started go-karting when I was 11. I went to a birthday party at a go-kart track, just how everyone does for fun. And it was one of those outdoor tracks.
Hmm.
And I saw the ones that you can actually own and compete. So
Hmm.
I was driving the rental ones at first, and I saw the quicker ones, and I was like, I really want to drive that one, Dad.
Hmm.
And I grew up in Colorado, snowmobiling, four-wheeling, doing all that. So I really enjoyed it when I tried it. So I ended up the kid whose go-kart it was let me drive it, and I ended up being quicker than he was, which was funny. So that's kind of where it all started. They're like, okay, she's actually pretty good, let's buy her one. So my dad got me my own cart, and it all just started from there. I won my first regional championship my first year when I was 12, and then did some road tax karting, then moved up to shifter carts, which is, it's a 6-speed sequential gearbox, and those things were a blast.
Hmm.
And then, the natural progression is usually to go from karting, and a lot of karters tend to go to open wheel. So
Hmm.
IndyCar has always been my dream. So I tested in USF 2000. I tested in Formula 4. The first thing I did, though, when I got out of karting at 17 was go to this thing called Skip Barber Racing School. And I'm
Hmm.
actually working with them and racing with them this year. So it's cool to kind of circle back to that. But have a great program. Where they have instructors that teach you all about cars and stuff. So that was really cool to go to. It's kind of that stepping stone into cars. So that's kind of where I started. Did a lot of open wheel testing, and then I raced legend cars. They're this kind of funky. They have a closed cockpit, but they're these cool, funny little cars. You'll have to look it up. I started racing those my freshman year of college. I kind of had to make the decision whether I wanted to go to school full time or race and pursue racing. And my dad's like, you're getting a degree, Lindsay, like you have to go to school. So
Hmm.
I ended up, going to school. I was racing legend cars my first year. Ended up winning the championship in that, which was really cool. Then I kind of took a couple year break in college because it's just really hard. My family's never been in motorsports, and anyone in motorsports knows how hard it is to find sponsorship, how crazy it can be. The sport's so expensive and so political, so you really have to make a
Yeah.
lot of good connections. So that was my biggest struggle in college, being a full-time student. I couldn't fly to races and market myself, do all that. I had tests, I had homework. So yeah, I took like a 3 or 4 year break. Then yeah, this is gonna be my first full season back. I was supposed to race in 2020 in GT4, and then that kind of got messed up due to COVID. So
Hmm.
that's kind of this my whole story.
Good deal. Well,
Yeah.
so a couple questions related to that. I know that, so I spoke to, I'm not sure if you know Samantha Tan, but I spoke to her. She's races in the Pirelli series, mostly BMWs. She's Canadian, and I think that she went to UC Irvine. I might have the college wrong, and
Okay.
then also kind of dabbled in racing. And she told me the same thing that you're kind of hinting at, is that motorsports is really entrepreneurial. It's not like baseball or football where you play in college and then, or volleyball, and then you kind of go either try out for the Olympic team or join the NFL and happily ever after. I mean, you're sort of building your repertoire while you're racing, throwing it all together, trying to get sponsors. So talk about that dynamic, and also coming from a family not rooted in motorsports. Is it more difficult? Do you have to use your personality a little bit more and wow people, or
Yeah,
nuts and
definitely.
bolts of it?
Yeah, definitely. Sponsorship, it's crazy how much it matters in racing. Like you said, in basketball or football, it's purely talent. If you're a really talented kid, you're gonna make it. If you're the best in the world and you can do it, like you're gonna make it. But in racing, the most talented drivers don't always get the seat. It's who has money, who has connections. Obviously, you have to have some talent, but
Mhm.
it's definitely entrepreneurial. And I think for me, I have had to use my personality. There's good and bad, and I think we can go in of being a girl, and we can go into that later if you want. But I've definitely had to use that. I think growing a social media presence has been helpful in ways because you can get your name out there and work with brands, and that's kind of what has gotten me my seat this year. I'm working with Clubhouse, and I don't know if you know anything about that, but they're like a social media group. It's a house where you can collaborate with other influencers and brands, and I think it's a great tool, and I've really loved working with them. But without my social media, I wouldn't have been there, and I wouldn't have got that sponsorship for this year. So it's definitely important.
Well, I was going to ask you about that because I noticed right off that you had a huge social media following. I know that probably some people follow you from racing, even though you're kind of in the beginning of it. But at the same time, I mean, do you feel like I categorize social media as kind of like there are a lot of men who are just looking for pretty girls to follow or superstars.
Yeah.
The good comes with the bad with that, I think, just from the superficial aspect of it. But do you find that once you grab people, there's a stable of people who follow you and are more interested in your motorsports repertoire and not just pictures of you and your friends hanging out?
Yes.
Living the glamorous life, there's more to it than you than your pictures, but how much crossover?
Yeah, totally.
So go ahead.
Yeah, so I kind of grew my following in college. I went to San Diego State. I was in a sorority. We would take photos at the beach, having fun. I'm in college, and that's kind of how my following, I guess, began to amass, because I would get reposted on Barstool. I'd get reposted on TFM, all those funny pages, and there's a lot of derogatory men that follow those. So there definitely has been a big struggle there, because I raced before I was a Instagram model or anything like that. And no one really saw that side of me, because that's during that break I took. So I was in high school, I was used to being known as Lindsay Brewer, the race car driver, like super cool. And then I think that kind of got washed away in college. So now that I'm finally back into racing, I see a lot of people like, she doesn't actually race. Like she's just doing this for clout or whatever, another dumb blonde trying to, it's just, there's a lot of negative backlash in that, and a lot of guys that just follow me for those certain type of photos, modeling, whatever. But I see as I post more racing, I'm gaining more of a following that's respectable and actually cares about my passion. And it's cool to see it grow. And I think it's just going to continue to grow. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you about that, because some of the women who I've interviewed a good handful of women in race car driving, and they kind of indicated that, even when they're at the track, if they're not wearing their fire suit, I think one of them actually said, like, no one would guess or assume that I was a driver being there.
Yes.
They think I'm one of the promotional girls. So does that bug you? Or obviously, if you lay it out on the track and you win a race and you wow everybody, that's got to feel good. But what about sort of being taken seriously by male competitors and just sort of the industry before you put your suit on, or
Yeah, I think people always look at me. I'm like, oh, like they're like, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I'm a race car driver. And they're like, what? And they like, no one believes me. Even obviously off the track, no one would suspect like a blonde girl, whatever, a girl in general, but just they wouldn't suspect me of being a race car driver. And on track too, they would assume, like you said, I would be a promo girl, and that it does bother me because I do wish I could be taken seriously in it. And I think that'll come, like you said, with results. So I'm excited for this year to actually race and show my skill. I think that'll help with that. But it is a challenge to overcome that. I love seeing more women in motorsports, and hopefully in the future, as more women join it, they'll become more acceptable. But then part of me is also like, okay, like, people underestimate me. It's kind of cool when people underestimate you, because you can show them what's up pretty much, Yeah, but it has been a struggle, but I think it's not too bad.
Well, let's talk about the cars you drive and how they handle. I know that there's, for those of us who watch and don't drive, it all kind of looks the same at times. But there's definitely racers, like I've interviewed Joey Logano a couple times, and I would definitely describe his style as opportunistic, especially when if you've ever seen him get into fisticuffs with other NASCAR drivers. And then there's ones that are a little bit more cool and laid back and sneaky, like Chase Elliott. And so how would you describe the cars that you drive and how you handle them, and maybe your style or just sort of your approach to racing?
Yeah, so I could tell you there's a few different types of cars in racing you can get into. So coming from karting, I've always wanted to do open wheel, so I want to do IndyCar, all that. But then I got to drive, legend cars, and I raced in the Celine Cup last year. I forgot to mention that, which is a sports car series. And I actually really liked it. My style is, I like to drive road courses, not just ovals. So I think for me, the type of driving, I love technical driving. I love not only the speed, I love speed, obviously, but I love a track that's very technical and you can utilize your skill and it's, get a flow for things. So I think just technical, flowy, and aggressive would be my style of driving. If that's answering your question. Yeah, I think just any type of racing where I can really show off handling and technicality, I really like to do. I did a stock car test one time and at Irwindale, and it just wasn't for me. I mean, I'm always, it was back when I was like 18, so I'm always open to whatever racing I can do. But to me, I like if you can show off your, turning skills, I guess, like technicality. So.
We'll talk about your I want to hear a little bit about your mental prep on good days and bad days. I'm interested in how athletes overall sort of recover from, like, let's say your first stage is terrible and you could write it off and just, take it as a learning experience. But the champions and the top competitors can always rebound from maybe a late start out of the gate. So talk about maybe your toughest days on the track, how you rebound, how you maybe fine tune your racing from, practice up to the race day.
Yeah. I think your mentality on it is one of the biggest things. If you're upset after, say, a bad qualifying session or a bad practice, that can ruin your entire race. And oh my gosh, I don't know if you can hear that. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Are
you done?
I'll reset. Oh my gosh, I can't turn this off. I don't know if this is recording. I'm trying to turn. Okay. Sorry about that.
No problem.
So, I feel like your mental focus is so important. It can ruin your entire race if you mess up your qualifying or if you mess up a bad practice. So it's very important if you make a mistake, especially when you're on the track. This is a big thing too. Like if you make a mistake on a corner and you don't take it as well as you want to, you have to calm yourself down and be like, okay, like that was the past corner. Let's look forward, because if you get caught up on the mistake, it will just frustrate you for the next corner and the next corner. And when I was younger, I found myself doing that a lot. I would get so frustrated, be like, oh, I just ruined my whole lap time by messing up that corner. And then you're just messing up your whole lap time even more, but and it'll mess up your race and you'll keep making mistakes. So I think it's very important to just calm yourself down and just think about it, be like, okay, you just have to keep looking forward. And I think one of my favorite drivers is Lewis Hamilton in Formula One, because no matter what, if there's like a mistake or something wrong with the car, he's so calm and level-headed and can just look forward. And I think that's what makes, a champion. So it's very important.
Now in sports, so you're from Los Angeles area, correct?
I'm from Colorado, but I've lived in, I went to San Diego State. So since I was 18, I've lived in Southern California. Okay.
So Southern California, despite not having an NFL team for a long time, I think it's sort of an underrated sports town. There's a big football presence, or a big presence of college sports, and I think of like surfing and all the different things. Talk about being, growing up in Colorado in the West and in LA, sort of being not the girl who's playing lacrosse or field hockey, but racing cars, what that's like. And also I want to hear about your idols, in sports, people who influence you, whether it's people that or not, people that you've watched on TV, like what athletes have really sort of stoked you along the way?
Yeah. So I would like to say, like, the athletes that have really inspired me, I've talked about it, Lewis Hamilton. He's one of my favorite athletes ever. I think he's just done such a great job with, coming from adversity growing up and just, pushing through that and winning 7 world titles. Like, that's crazy. And then I think another, I love Danica Patrick. She has pushed through, and, being a female in the industry, she was the first female to really be known and, show what we can do. So I think that's really important. And honestly, Kobe has always been an inspiration to me. So it was really tough hearing about that. Just anyone with such a positive, good mentality who has great sportsmanship. I think that's just something I really look for. So, and then to answer your other question, growing up, being in California, being a race car driver, it's actually funny because I'm very girly, I'm a very girly girl, tomboy at the same time. So it's just funny. A lot of my friends and stuff just like, I can't believe you race. I don't know. It's funny being in California, Southern California. Everything's about entertainment and movies. And they're like, I've never met a race car driver yet, a girl race car driver.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really fun.
Good deal.
Yeah.
So, well, I think that's pretty much, I almost had a question come to mind, but now
I know, ask me anything.
Loving your story enough that it seems like you keep a positive attitude, and
yeah, that's
like the opportunity. So, wait, last thing. Yeah. Talk about, you have a race coming up in the beginning of March.
Yes. Okay. So I'm racing TC America this year. It's in SRO. So I'm going to be with Skip Barber Racing. Clubhouse is my primary sponsor. I'm hoping to do other races, but my first race is March 7th in Sonoma. And I'm really excited. I've never raced at that track, but it's very technical, which I like. So I think it'll be a really good time. These cars are front wheel drive cars. And I'm used to driving rear wheel drive cars. So it's a completely different driving style. And, I've been practicing so much this past month at Circuit of the Americas in Texas. That's where we've been based out of this last month. And I'm really excited. I'm really confident going into it. And I think, it should be fun.
Good deal. Well, thanks for taking time to talk to me.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me too.
Good deal.
All right.
Once you